Whispers of a Stolen Heart. Part 1. The Stranger in the Rain. The rain fell in delicate sheets over the small town of Ashwood, drenching the cobblestone streets and casting a silver glow on the pavement. Inside the quaint little bookstore on Maple Avenue, Elena Carter stacked the last of the romance novels on the display table. She glanced out the large window, watching as pedestrians rushed for shelter under awnings and storefronts, their hurried footsteps echoing through the near-empty street. Just as she was about to close up for the night, the bell above the door jingled. A gust of cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of rain and something faintly familiar, sandalwood and crisp autumn leaves. A tall figure stepped inside, his dark overcoat dripping onto the floor, his deep blue eyes scanning the shelves with the kind of longing usually reserved for something lost. Elena's heart skipped a beat. There was something hauntingly captivating about him, like a secret waiting to be unraveled. "You're open late," the man said, his voice smooth, yet laced with something distant. "Only for the lonely souls who wander in during the rain," she quipped, offering a small smile. The man chuckled, running a hand through his damp, dark hair. "Then I suppose I qualify." He stepped closer, his gaze settling on her, as if trying to place her from a distant memory. "I'm Adrian," he finally said. "Elena," she replied, extending her hand. The moment his fingers brushed against hers, a strange warmth spread through her chest. It was an innocent touch, yet it lingered in a way that felt like a whisper of something stolen, something that should have been hers long ago. For a while, neither spoke. The bookstore, usually filled with soft jazz and the scent of old pages, felt heavier, like the walls were holding a breath, waiting for what came next. Adrian finally broke the silence. "Do you believe in fate?" Elena blinked, taken aback by the sudden question. "I suppose I do. Why?" His smile was laced with something bittersweet. "Because sometimes fate brings us back to the things we didn't know we lost." She didn't understand what he meant, but something about the way he said it sent shivers down her spine. As Adrian browsed the shelves, she couldn't help but steal glances at him. There was a quiet sadness in his eyes, a loneliness she recognized all too well. But there was also something else, something that felt oddly familiar, as if she had met him before in another lifetime. When he finally approached the counter, he placed a single book in front of her, a tattered copy of Whispers of a Stolen Heart. Her breath hitched. This book. Adrian's gaze locked onto hers. "Do you remember it?" She did, vividly. It was a book she had lost years ago, one she had cherished more than any other. But that wasn't what stole her breath. Inside the cover, scrawled in neat cursive, was her own handwriting. "To the one who holds my heart, even if he doesn't know it yet." Elena's pulse thundered in her ears as she looked up at him. "Where did you get this?" Adrian's expression was unreadable, his eyes dark pools of mystery. "It was given to me by someone I loved and lost." A chill ran down her spine. She had written that message when she was 16, when she had fallen in love with someone who had vanished from her life without a trace. Someone she had never stopped searching for. Adrian, her stolen heart. And now, after all these years, he was standing in front of her, holding the very thing that had once bound them together. But the question remained. Had fate brought him back to return what was lost, or to steal her heart all over again? Part 2. A past rekindled. The world seemed to fade as Elena stared at Adrian, her breath caught in her throat. The air between them thickened, laden with unspoken memories. The bookstore, which had once felt so warm and comforting, now seemed like a stage for something far more intense, a confrontation with the past. Adrian. Her voice trembled, betraying the storm of emotions churning within her. I don't understand. You disappeared, without a word, and now, you're back. After all these years. He looked down at the book in his hands, running a finger over the frayed edges of its cover. I never wanted to leave, Elena. But sometimes life doesn't give us the luxury of choices. I thought of you every day. I swear I did. Her heart clenched at the sincerity in his eyes. But there was a distance there, a shadow that refused to dissipate. She had dreamed of this moment so many times. The day he would come back, the answers he would provide, the closure she so desperately sought. Yet, in his presence, it felt as if nothing had changed, as if he had never truly left, but had simply been waiting for the right moment to return. "Why didn't you come back sooner?" she asked, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Adrian hesitated, his gaze shifting from the book to her face. "I couldn't. There were things I had to do, things I couldn't escape. I thought it would be easier for you if I stayed away." Elena shook her head. The pain of his absence, of the years spent wondering what went wrong, was far worse than any explanation he could offer now. "You left me with nothing, Adrian. No explanation. No goodbye." The rain outside began to intensify, its rhythmic tapping on the window a stark contrast to the chaos inside Elena's heart. Adrian took a step forward, closing the distance between them, his gaze softening. "I'm sorry. I truly am," he whispered, his voice breaking slightly. "If I could change what happened, I would. But I can't. All I can do is try to make things right now." There was a pause as their eyes locked, and for a moment, it was as though time had stopped. The years that had passed, the pain, the heartache, all of it seemed to dissolve in the presence of the man she had once loved. But the wound he had left in her heart was still fresh, still aching, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to forgive him, or if she ever would. "What happened to us, Adrian?" Elena whispered, her voice barely audible. "What happened to everything we dreamed of?" He exhaled slowly, his shoulders slumping as though the weight of her question had crushed him. "I was taken away, Elena. My family. They made sure I didn't have a choice. They didn't want me with you. They didn't want me to be the man I wanted to be." Elena's breath caught in her throat. She had never known the true reason behind his sudden departure, the reason he had disappeared without so much as a trace. The pieces of their broken past were finally starting to come together, but with it came a surge of anger, confusion, and a deep, aching sorrow. "You never told me," she said, her voice cracking. "You never gave me a chance to understand. You left me in the dark." "I know," Adrian said, his voice filled with regret. "I was trying to protect you. I thought it was for the best. But in the end, I was only protecting myself." The silence stretched between them, heavy and thick. Elena didn't know what to say, how to process the whirlwind of emotions that had suddenly resurfaced. She had once been his world, his everything. But now, he was just a stranger with the face of the man she had loved. "I don't know what to do with all of this," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can forgive you." Adrian's face softened, and he reached out, gently brushing a lock of hair from her face. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just need you to know that I never stopped thinking about you. And I never will." Her heart trembled at his words, but the anger, the betrayal, was still there. She wanted to believe him, wanted to reach out and let herself fall into his arms once more, but the walls she had built around her heart over the years were too strong. "I need time," she said, her voice steady, but her hands shaking as she gripped the edge of the counter. "I need to figure this out. I need to know who I am without you." "I understand," Adrian replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I won't rush you. I just need you to know that I'm here, and I'll wait for as long as it takes." As he turned to leave, Elena felt a pang of something deep within her, a longing, a yearning that had been dormant for so long. She had pushed him away, convinced herself that she was better off without him. But now that he was back, it felt as though her heart was finally awake, finally alive. She watched as Adrian stepped out into the rain, disappearing into the night. The doorbell chimed softly as it closed behind him, but the sound was drowned out by the rush of thoughts and emotions flooding her mind. She had to make a choice. Would she let him back into her heart, or would she let the past remain buried, never to be uncovered again? Part 3. The echo of forever. Elena barely slept that night. The rain had stopped some time before dawn, leaving behind a quiet stillness that felt suffocating. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word Adrian had said, every look he had given her. The book, the one she had lost years ago, sat on her nightstand, a painful reminder that fate had never truly let her move on. By the time morning arrived, she had made up her mind. She needed answers, not just about why he had left, but about what was left between them. As the sun peeked through the gray clouds, she found herself standing outside the small cafe where they had spent countless afternoons together in their youth. She almost expected it to feel different, to seem smaller, but it was just as she remembered, warm, inviting, filled with the scent of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls. And there he was. Adrian sat in the far corner, his hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee. He looked up the moment she walked in, his blue eyes locking onto hers, a mixture of relief and nervous anticipation crossing his face. "Elena." He stood, as if ready to run to her, but something in her posture made him hesitate. She swallowed hard before taking the seat across from him. "Tell me everything," she said simply. "No more secrets, no more half-truths. If you ever loved me, Adrian, you'll give me the truth now." He exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "I owe you that much." She watched as he struggled to find the words, as though the truth was something that had been buried so deep inside him. It hurt to bring it to the surface. "When we were 18, he began, "I planned to leave with you. Do you remember?" Elena nodded. How could she forget? They had dreamed of escaping Ashwood together, of building a life free from the expectations that had suffocated them both. But she had waited at the train station that night, and he had never shown up. "My father found out," Adrian continued, his voice tight. "He had been watching me, watching us. He made it clear that if I left, I would lose everything. And I wasn't afraid of that. I was ready to give it all up for you. But then, he threatened you." Elena's breath caught in her throat. "Me?" Adrian nodded, his jaw tightening. "He told me if I walked away he would ruin you. He had power, Elena. Money. Influence. He could have destroyed your family, taken away everything you loved, and I couldn't let that happen." Elena's heart pounded in her chest. "So you left instead." "I didn't just leave," Adrian said, his voice heavy with regret. I let you believe I abandoned you. Because if you hated me, if you moved on, then you'd be safe. She sat back, letting his words sink in. The years of pain, of unanswered questions, all coming to a crashing realization. He hadn't left because he stopped loving her. He had left because he had loved her too much to stay. The anger she had held on to for so long began to crack, but it didn't shatter completely. You should have told me, she whispered. You should have trusted me. I was a scared kid, Elena, Adrian admitted. I thought I was doing the right thing. But I was wrong. And I've regretted it every day since. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the soft clinking of coffee cups and distant murmurs of other patrons. Why now? She asked finally. Why come back after all this time? His eyes softened, filled with a tenderness that made her heart ache. Because I couldn't stay away any longer. I've spent years convincing myself you were better off without me, but I was lying to myself. And when I found that book, the one you wrote in, I knew it was a sign, a second chance. Elena ran her fingers along the rim of her cup, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. A part of her wanted to stand up and walk away, to protect herself from more heartache. But another part, the part that had never stopped loving him, wanted to believe in second chances. I don't know if we can go back to what we were, she admitted. Too much time has passed. Adrian reached across the table, his fingers brushing against hers. Then let's start over, he said. Not as the kids we used to be, but as who we are now. No more running. No more secrets. Elena stared at his hand, at the warmth that radiated from his touch. It would be so easy to give in, to fall back into his arms. But love wasn't just about falling. It was about trusting, about knowing that the person standing beside you wouldn't disappear when things got hard. And she wasn't sure if she was ready to take that risk. Not yet. I need time, she said softly. Adrian nodded, though she could see the flicker of disappointment in his eyes. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere this time. For the first time since he had returned, Elena felt something shift inside her. A tiny crack in the walls she had built around her heart. Maybe, just maybe, some things weren't meant to stay lost forever.